we're going to be talking about things to do in the Caribbean. So, hi Ian, thank you
Hello.
for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And the first thing I would like to ask you is to talk a little bit about yourself, about your experience as a captain, how you got into yachting and the marine industry in general.
Okay. Well, I started in yachting through sailing. So I grew up teaching sailing and then got into charter boats in the Virgin Islands. And then I ran sailing yachts that we would go from Newport, Rhode Island to the Caribbean every year. So I did that for 10 years. So I got to know the Caribbean pretty well.
Wow,
Yeah, from the Virgin Islands down to Grenada and back.
nice. And now you're here in Fort Lauderdale, right? Based in Fort Lauderdale?
I'm based in Palm Beach now, yes.
Palm Beach.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. So I met Captain Ian from a boat, a yacht that I was selling with my company, and it's a pleasure to have you here at our podcast. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So my first question, Ian, what makes the Caribbean one of the top destinations for yacht owners?
Well, the Caribbean has a lot of anchorages and many islands to call on. Lots of different cultures as well mixed in. You have islands that are originally French, Dutch, you have the U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands. So there's a lot to see, and navigation is pretty straightforward. It's very deep. And unlike the Bahamas, the Caribbean is more dramatic. You have deep water going up into mountains, so it's very lush. So it's a beautiful place to see.
Wow. And what are the advantages of visiting the Caribbean by yacht versus flying there?
Well, if you fly there and stay in a resort, certainly the islands, one island is great to visit, but if you have a yacht, you get to see several islands. And you get to have also, if it's your own yacht, you have the level of comfort and hospitality from your crew that would be unrivaled from a resort type atmosphere. Gives you the freedom to change your itinerary as you see fit. If you like one island, stay there for multiple days, or if you are not happy with the place you are in, you can pull anchor and go to the next spot.
Awesome. That's the way to go, right? By
Yeah,
yacht.
absolutely. One of the biggest advantages of having your own yacht there is that you can fly with just your passport, because all your clothes, bathing suit, your toothbrush is already on board. So it's your home away from home,
Yeah,
which is different than staying in a hotel.
definitely. Oh, carrying suitcases is one of the most annoying parts of traveling for me.
Right, right.
So that's definitely a plus. And which time of the year is best for traveling in the Caribbean?
So I would avoid December, January. They have a phenomenon called the Christmas winds. It usually happens somewhere around late December, early January. It can be pretty windy and rough. It's not predictable down to the day. So that time can be a little bit difficult, although there are things during that time that are great. For instance, the New Year's Eve party at Foxy's and Joost Van Dyke is considered one of the best parties in the world.
Wow.
So if you can brave the wind, it's worth it. Generally, more into the springtime, February, March, April is the peak season. And I've also spent summers there. It's a little more difficult because it's hurricane season. Insurance becomes a logistical thing that you need to deal with, but it's very nice because there's no one there and there's no wind. So the diving is epic in the summer, and it's like glass. So it's worth the going in the summer too.
Nice, thank you. Now, is there a limitation as to the size of yachts that can visit the Caribbean? Is the water shallow there? You just said it was deep, right?
It's pretty deep. You're going to see some of the biggest yachts in the world in the Caribbean, and they'll travel from Europe and beyond just to come there for the winter.
Wow.
That's why it's such a very popular destination. So navigation is pretty straightforward. In the past, some of the charts weren't so accurate, but nowadays modern charts are very accurate, and it's fairly easy to navigate. I would suggest some of the older charts like CYC yachting charts and Imre Lair charts as a reference to whatever format you have, because certainly the more information the better.
Yeah.
And some of those old cruising guides by Don Street, when it was, it used to be just sailors that visited there, motor yachts were not very common, so there's a lot of good information in those old cruising guides.
Okay, good to know. And how long would be the ideal time for a vacation on the Caribbean?
Well, certainly a week or 10 days, you could fill 2 weeks if you want to. If you're in the Virgin Islands, you could do a very nice 5-day vacation because all the islands are very close together.
Okay.
So you could visit multiple islands in one day.
Mm.
If you're over in the leewards of the windwards, you're going to have more travel time between islands. So you would want to have a longer stay. If you are in the leewards, your trip is probably going to start through St. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you would fly in, and then you'll have to go to your islands and then go back to St. Martin. In the Virgin Islands, you would probably either fly into St. Thomas or Tortola. So everything's pretty close together in the Virgins.
Okay. So, along the same line, which islands do you recommend the most, and how far away are they from each other?
The list is very long. In the Virgins, St. John I call my second home in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It's 2/3 national park. It's
Wow.
definitely worth a visit to St. John. Joost van Dyke in the British Virgin Islands. It's popular because of Foxy's Bar, which is where that New Year's Eve party is. And in White Bay around the corner is Soggy Dollar Bar, where they invented the painkiller cocktail.
Oh.
And throughout the British Virgin Islands. It's a long list, but Virgin Gorda, the Baths, where they've had many photo shoots, a lot of Sports Illustrated swimsuit photo shoots were held there. Norman Island, Peter Island, Cooper Island for lunch. There are also snorkeling and diving spots all through there that are worth seeing. Moving into the windwards, St. Martin would probably be your starting off spot where you would fly into. St. Bart's, very famous, very upscale, but beautiful beaches on St. Bart's and a lot of great cuisine as well. And then Nevis, if you're into diving, Saba is known as one of the best spots in the Caribbean to dive. The Tobago Keys are known for their snorkeling and diving. And St. Kitts, St. Lucia are beautiful. Dominica's very lush rainforest. And Grenada also is a nice destination.
And how long does it take to get from one island to the other? The Virgin Islands, you said they were close to each other, right?
Yeah, it's half a day to any one of the islands in the Virgins.
So half a day is like 4 hours?
Yes.
Or? Okay, in the Virgin Islands. And what about the windwards?
In the windwards, it's about a half a day to St. Bart's. If you're going down to Saba, that's probably a full day. And then Martinique, Guadeloupe, also another full day. Also, I forgot to mention before, the Saints, which is part of Guadeloupe, near Guadeloupe. Very beautiful place. Nice beaches, again, great diving.
Mm. So people usually go to islands that are close to each other and spend their vacations there, right? Is that like the common?
It depends on, the size of your yacht, your cruising speed, and what you want to do. If you're looking for more out-of-the-way places, there are those options as well. The Spanish Virgin Islands, which is between Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. You know, that's a place where you can go and maybe you only see one or two other boats.
Wow.
But if you want to hit just the top destinations, your captain can write an itinerary where you can see a different island every day.
Okay. Okay. And
You shouldn't have to do an overnight trip, really.
Okay. Nice. So approximately, you said 1 week to 10 days, you can get to see the top destinations?
Yes, yeah, in either area, yes.
Nice, very cool. Okay, now, what kinds of activities can kids enjoy in the different islands?
Well, certainly the beaches are a major attraction. Also hiking, in Virgin Gorda, the baths are these, it's a bunch of boulders that you kind of walk through and go through little grottos and stuff. That's a big hit with the kids. In the past, North Sound and Virgin Gorda, there's the Bitter End Yacht Club, which is a big attraction. It's not open yet. It's still, they're still recovering from the hurricanes. But by the end of this season or next season, they should reopen. And they have a lot of activities. They have movies for kids at night, and you can rent little sailboats and sail around. It's a protected bay there. One destination we used to do with children on board in St. Martin, there are zip lines. In this, I can't recall the name right now, but that was a big hit.
Yeah, that sounds
going through
fun.
the zip lines, you're kind of going through underneath the canopy of a rainforest.
Wow.
And they have that in some other islands as well, which is always a big hit with kids.
Yeah, I bet. Awesome. Okay, next question. Which activities would you recommend for people who are more athletic?
So hiking, you know, in St. John, we used to hike in the national park a lot. There's, you know, you could go running. I would encourage people to use common sense when you're in an unfamiliar place, just like you would anywhere. You know, stay together, you know, don't go alone.
Yeah.
And also be aware that, you know, some islands they drive on the left, some on the right, so that's something to pay attention to. You know, some of the roads are a little narrow, so you want to be careful if you're running.
Yeah.
Swimming, diving. It's a good idea to, if you can bring some bikes. It's good not only just for exercise or for exploring, but also just to go get provisions instead of using a taxi. You just need to pick something up. And I usually tell people, get cheap bikes, because they're going to be exposed to salt water and they're probably not going to last that long.
Okay.
And if you're going to leave them locked up, you know, there's always a risk that they could, you know, disappear.
Yeah, I know.
So, but there's biking. That's about it for
Nice.
exercise. Yeah.
Okay. And what are the best spots for diving?
As I mentioned, Saba's well known for its diving. The diving throughout the Caribbean is amazing. We usually use local dive shops. We'll go in and they're usually very helpful, pointing in the right direction. And also, it's worth it just to use a local dive shop to take you on their dive boat, because they know the best areas. And then once you see those areas, if you want to take your own tender and your own equipment, certainly you can revisit them. I think actually you're required to use a local dive company so that they can make sure that you're not damaging any of their natural resources.
Okay, nice. I can understand that. So in general, the Caribbean islands are very concerned about conserving their natural resources.
Yes,
Because
as they
that's the
should be.
main attraction for
Yes.
people to go there, right?
Yes. Off the top of my head, in the Virgin Islands, the dogs are good. There are some areas near both Yost Van Dyke. In St. Bart's, right in Gustavia Harbor, there's a little island there that's very popular, snorkeling and diving. The list is endless, really.
And what kind of things do you see? What kind of sea life do you encounter?
Tropical fish, I've seen octopus, every once in a while a shark if you're in more of the out of the way places, but it's not common.
Okay.
You know they're there, but it's usually in areas where it goes into very deep water. Turtles, love to swim with turtles. Rays, manta rays and stingrays.
Nice. That must be beautiful.
Okay, are there any other activities or places you would recommend that we haven't talked about?
I did mention the Spanish Virgin Islands. One place that I really like, if you're over in Antigua, Barbuda is part of Antigua, so you can clear customs in Antigua and go to Barbuda. Barbuda was wiped out by the hurricane uh, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's been abandoned since then. But the highlight of that place is there's an 11-mile-long beach, white sand beach, and there's no one there.
Wow.
So if you're into out-of-the-way places and the weather permits, it's worth a visit. If you're in Saba, taking a taxi tour of the island, we do that a lot when we'll get a taxi and get a tour. And taxi drivers are, unofficial tour guides, so they'll give you a little bit of history.
And where are the islands like? You said they're each different, like some are French, some are British and Spanish. So do you see different architecture, different culture? What
You
kind
do.
of things do you see when you're?
You do. You'll see windmills and sugarcane was the big export of the Caribbean. So there's a lot of ruins of that. History of the Dutch and the French occupations, and then eventually the U.S. and those Virgin Islands. It's very mountainous. Usually it's windy roads, pretty lush. There are places like, I know in Nevis you can visit. There are monkeys in the rainforest that you can go see. A lot of dramatic landscape, beautiful beaches.
Wow. Yeah, the mountain and the beach together, it's so
Right.
unique, right?
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, and one more question, Ian.
Is there anything, I'm thinking about practicality, when people are planning their travels. Is there anything that you can't find there or is not great quality and you're better off bringing your own?
Definitely. It is worth, we do this every time we go to the Caribbean, invest in a chest freezer and fill it with meat.
Oh.
Because the quality of the meat in some of the islands is difficult to get. Usually you can get seafood because there's fresh caught seafood. But one of those freezers will pay for itself over and over again.
Okay.
And certainly if you have any medications, you should bring your own and enough for the duration of your trip. I recommend everybody have a good medical kit. There's also a company called MedAir that will supply the medical kit, and then they have 24/7 service where you can call and get a specialist physician on the phone should you have the need for that. I also recommend that people have life flight insurance should anybody fall ill, that they can get on a plane and a life flight plane and be flown to the States for medical care. Satellite communications are important because cell phones are not always functional. And I recommend a portable satellite phone. So if your crew were to drop you off on the island, you can communicate with the mothership instead of relying on radios, which are not always going to work, especially if you're on the other side of the map. It's worth to have a cell phone that will take a foreign cell phone chip, an unlocked phone, if you will. In the BVI, we usually buy a cell phone chip. I think Lime is their local provider, which will be a lot cheaper than using roaming charges from your American carrier. You also want to be aware if you're in the BVI with your phone that if it's on, it needs to be in airplane mode. Because even if it switches over to their network and a text message comes in, they start charging pretty significant rates for that.
Oh.
And it's been common even on the north side of St. John, your phone will switch over to BVI network and people get unexpected charges.
Okay.
And St. Martin as well, we buy a phone chip.
So, can you buy one chip, for example, in the BVI and use that one in all the islands?
Yes, I think line is pretty universal
Okay.
through the Virgins and the Windwards. I'm not so sure about the Legions right now, what network they're using.
Okay.
I would make sure that your yacht has an ample supply of spare parts. For example, if you don't have a spare starter and you're waiting for one to come from the States, that could be the difference between an hour delay while your engineer switches it out or a canceled vacation. Or an air conditioning pump, for example. So that you want to make sure that you have what you need.
Yes. Very
So,
important.
Ian, could you recommend any good restaurants or cool places to eat in the Caribbean islands?
Oh, there are plenty. In St. John, Chateau Bordeaux on the top of Bordeaux Mountain, spectacular view for sunset and four-star cuisine. In Anguilla, they have a culinary school, it's the Cuisinart School, and they also have a restaurant associated with the school, which is just, I've had a spectacular meal there before. In St. Bart's, the Carl Gustav, there are many good restaurants in St. Bart's. And then just any of the beach bars have, wonderful fresh seafood and, have a cocktail and sunset.
Nice.
And also, what about the currency? Are all the islands
Accepting dollars, or should people bring different currencies?
The dollar is pretty universal, but euros are also used in the French and islands such as Saint Martin, Saint Bart's, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. If the exchange rate is unbalanced, you might want to consider bringing your own euros, because you'll get a better exchange rate in the States than you would down there.
Okay, yeah. And what about purchasing, like the prices of things? Are they cheaper? Is food cheaper? Are groceries cheaper there than in the U.S.?
It's going to be a little more expensive. Produce is a little bit more expensive. I would usually do my provisioning, if I could, in St. Martin, because the food is brought in by plane from France. So if you want French cheeses or French wine, good place to stock up on that stuff. The prices are pretty reasonable. In some of the islands, you want to watch out for, or tell your chef, if they're provisioning, not just to grab everything, you really need to look at the prices, because sometimes some things are artificially inflated. One week, strawberries might be $20 for a little box, or a half a gallon of milk might be $10, and you might be able to go across the street and get it for a normal price, but you need to pay attention to the tags.
And they're doing this to catch tourists when they're off guard, pretty much?
Yeah. People are used to just grabbing what they want,
Okay.
and not looking at the prices, and that's a trap you can fall into.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, now do you have any other advice for people planning to visit the Caribbean on a yacht?
I would encourage people to go with zinc-based sunscreen. There's a real effort. Regular commercial sunscreens are killing the reefs. So already in Hawaii, they banned sunscreens that are not eco-friendly.
Wow.
And we've been using clear zinc. Panama Jack is my favorite for years, because it just seems to be more waterproof anyway. It seems to be very effective.
Oh, that's a great tip. Okay, awesome.
Also, another piece of advice, if you have a jet ski on board, beware that the British Virgin Islands, they are not allowed. They treat them like a weapon. You actually have to lock them to your boat.
Oh.
So they are not allowed there, and also in the U.S. Virgin Islands, in the national park areas, you can't use the jet ski.
And this is to protect the marine life, or what is it?
Yes, protect marine life, and people just don't like the noise. So BVI has taken the step to just ban them completely.
Wow.
If you're fishing down there, make sure you pay attention to local regulations and get a fishing permit. If you're in the British Virgin Islands and you're fishing without a permit, they can seize your boat.
Wow.
They take it very seriously. And beware, if you're even close to the line between the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands, that you should have a BVI fishing permit.
Wow, that's amazing. And what do they ask of people in order to get a fishing permit?
Just when you check in with customs, they'll ask you if you want a fishing permit, and make sure you buy one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are there restrictions as to which kind of fish you can?
I don't believe so. But good thing you asked though, spear fishing in the BVI is also illegal.
Okay.
So if you have a spear gun on board, don't take it in the water.
Okay.
And in the U.S. Virgin Islands, inside the national park also, no spear fishing allowed.
Okay. Good.
It's more lax over in the windwards and leewards. It's more out of the way, and you can do those activities.
Okay.
Even if you have a young child with a fishing line in the water, the boat has to have a fishing permit.
Okay. Wow, that's very important to know. Is there any story you would like to tell us about your trips to the Caribbean? Anything unique that you saw or something, that really stands out for you when you remember the Caribbean?
Well, it's really some of my best memories are of the people and the friends that I've made traveling through the Caribbean. And when we go back, we always seek out the people that we've met before. There are a lot of good memories there. If you ask my wife, it's always about snorkeling, and she would go snorkeling with turtles every morning. That was her routine, so that would be her go-to. For me, it's the sailing, and the beaches, the beautiful beaches.
Wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Ian.
You're welcome.
I can't wait to go to the Caribbean after this.
Well, enjoy.
Yes, and if anyone wants to contact Captain Ian to ask him questions or to hire him to captain your yacht for Caribbean or for any other destinations, you will find all his contact information in the episode notes, and in the video you will also find it in the description. Okay? Thank you so much, Ian.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.